Very much, Jan. Tonight's program began life as a recital featuring soprano Michelle Areyzaga and pianist Jamie Shaak. And it's become a bit more than that, as they were able to bring along some very, very talented musical friends. Specifically, clarinetist Elizandro Garcia Montoya, oboist Grace Hong, narrator Maria Lagios, and the entire Kontras Quartet. Much of the music that we'll be hearing comes from American composers, namely Lee Hoiby, Jake Heggie, Stacey Garrop, and Jamie Shaak herself. But there will also be music by Glier, Miguel del Aguila, and Samuel Coleridge Taylor. Now, I just mentioned a moment ago that Jamie is a composer, but she is also an arranger. And we are about to hear what happens when she puts on that hat, because the first music we'll hear tonight is her arrangement of a movement from the Piano Concerto No. 2 by Lee Hoiby, the Madison, Wisconsin-born composer who lived from 1926 to 2011 and who was known primarily for his songs and his operas. So, Jamie, first of all, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you. It's been a while.
It's been too long. It's been too long. Great to be here.
We're very glad you are, and we're so glad you brought all these wonderful folks with you. Tell me a bit about the piece you're going to be playing from the Concerto No. 2 by Hoiby, and how you were attracted to it and decided to arrange it.
Yes, actually the first time we ever played live from WFMT was with Michelle Areyzaga when we sang some of the Hoiby songs.
Right.
And at that point, I was in touch with Lee Hoiby, who lived in New York. And when I was in graduate school, I met him and became very familiar with his work. And so in about 2000, I came across this beautiful Piano Concerto No. 2. And he had written it for himself to play, and hoping that others would play it. And sadly, it's only had one live performance before tonight, which was the whole piece he played here in Chicago, June 6th, 1980. So tomorrow would have been that anniversary, which is surprising. But so he performed it once, then Stanley Babin has recorded it. So the performance I heard was the recording. And I fell in love with this slow movement, and I just didn't want the piece not to be heard. If the whole concerto wasn't performed, I thought, well, at least we can keep this beautiful slow movement alive.
Right. So it's hard to get together an entire orchestra when you want to hear something.
Yes.
So you made this wonderful arrangement for essentially clarinet, piano, and oboe, and string quartet. So let's hear the members of the Kontras Quartet, clarinetist Elizandro Garcia Montoya, oboist Grace Hong, and pianist Jamie Shaak in the second movement, the Lento Espressivo, from the Piano Concerto No. 2 by Lee Hoiby. That was music by Lee Hoiby from his Piano Concerto No. 2 in D major, written in 1979. We heard the second movement, marked Lento Espressivo, in the arrangement by Jamie Shaak. The performance featured the Kontras String Quartet, clarinetist Elizandro Garcia Montoya, oboist Grace Hong, and pianist Jamie Shaak. We're going to move on now to music by Jamie, based, or rather, actually a setting of a poem, a great poem, by Edna St. Vincent Millay. The pianist in this performance will be Jamie, and the narrator will be Maria Lagios, to whom we're going to speak now about the whole idea of setting this remarkable poem to music. This was, in fact, if not the greatest poem she ever wrote, and I think it was what initially put her on the map at the age of, 19? It was certainly close to being the greatest she ever wrote.
This poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay was written when she was 19 years old in 1912. She had been encouraged by her mother, a passionate poet herself, to start writing poetry when she was a child. As soon as she learned to read and write, she began writing poems. And by the age of 19, she was a very frustrated, unhappy young woman. She was unable, because of economic hardships, to go on to school, which was her dream. And she came from a broken home. And so she decided that she would submit this poem to the prestigious poetry competition in America called the Lyric Year. And this was a composite publication of 100 of the best poems written by Americans. And she dreamed that at the age of 19, she might win the first prize, which was $500, in hopes that she could perhaps begin a college education and help her mother out with the financial problems in the family. The poem served as a catalyst for a brilliant career for Edna St. Vincent Millay, who became truly an adored American poet. It was immediately embraced by the panel of judges, who assumed that it could only be written by an adult male. None of the expert panel accepted easily the truth that the profoundly mature 201-line poem, a couplet creation in perfect rhyme and meter, on the wondrous concept of rebirth, could be written by a teenage female. Shortly thereafter, however, the offers kept coming in, and both Vassar and Smith were beckoning her with full scholarships to come to campus. And by 1923, just a few years after graduating from Vassar, which she did in a shortened time, she won the Pulitzer Prize in 1923, and that immediately allowed her to publish publications of collections of poems which became bestsellers in America. And her public readings of her poetry filled concert halls for over 25 years and generated for her an equivalent of a six-figure income during the Depression, which was pretty phenomenal. She is highly acclaimed as the famed vixen of the love sonnets. And actually, she became kind of like the Taylor Swift of her day. Her face was on every magazine, women copied her haircut and her dress, and men fell passionately in love with her. Her most famous poetic admission, we all have heard, burning the candle at both ends. This phrase has become a common phrase in the American speech. In many ways, it led to her full and controversial life, reveling in fame and fortune until a tragic death at 58. We have fallen in love with this poem, inspired by the introduction by Mark Reagan, Jamie's husband, who one day said, "Maria, you have to read this poem." And this just developed into this wonderful sharing creation that we have offering today as a premiere. Jamie has prepared the piano. You will hear sounds coming out of the piano that you wouldn't expect, exploiting the percussive possibilities of the piano, and also helping the limitless potential of this concept of rebirth. A lot of people ask why it's pronounced Renaissance. But that was actually very clearly indicated as Edna's preference. She insisted on that over the classic French pronunciation, Renaissance. We are delighted to be here tonight to do this premiere performance of this narrated poem, Renaissance, arranged by Jamie Shaak. All I could see from where I stood was 3 long mountains and a wood. I turned and looked the other way and saw 3 islands in a bay. So with my eyes, I traced the line of the horizon, thin and fine, straight around till I was come back to where I'd started from. And all I saw was 3 long mountains and a wood. Over these things I could not see. These were the things that bounded me. And I could touch them with my hand, almost, I thought, from where I stand. And all at once things seemed so small. My breath came short and scarce at all. But sure, the sky is big, I said, miles and miles above my head. So here upon my back I'll lie and look my fill into the sky. And so I looked, and after all, the sky was not so very tall. The sky, I said, must somewhere stop. And sure enough, I see the top. The sky, I thought, is not so grand. I most could touch it with my hand. And reaching up my hand to try, I screamed to feel it touch the sky. I screamed, and lo, infinity came down and settled over me, forced back my scream into my chest, bent back my arm upon my breast, and pressing the undefined, the definition of my mind, held up before my eyes a glass through which my shrinking sight did pass, until it seemed I must behold immensity made manifold. Whisper to me a word whose sound deafened the ear for year worlds around, and brought unmuffled to my ears the gossiping of friendly spheres, the creaking of the tented sky, the ticking of eternity. I saw and heard and knew at last the how and why of all things past and present and forevermore. The universe, cleft to its core, lay open by my probing sense that, sickening, I would fain pluck thence, but could not. Nay, but needs must suck at the great wound, and could not pluck my lips away till I had drawn all the venom out. Ah, fearful pawn, for my omniscience paid I toll in infinite remorse of soul. All sin was of my sinning, all atoning mine, and mine the gall of all regret. Mine was the weight of every brooded wrong, the hate that stood behind each envious thrust. Mine every greed, mine every lust, and all the while for every grief, suffering, I craved relief with individual desire, craved all in vain, and felt fierce fire about 1,000 people crawl, perished with each, then mourned for all. A man was starving in Capri. He moved his eyes and looked at me. I felt his gaze. I heard his moan. I knew his hunger as my own. I saw at sea a great fog bank between two ships that struck and sank. 1,000 screams the heavens smote, and every scream tore through my throat. No hurt I did not feel, no death that was not mine. Mine each last breath, all suffering mine, and mine its rod. Mine pity, like the pity of God. Ah, awful weight, infinity pressed down upon the finite me. My anguished spirit, like a bird beating against my lips, I heard, yet lay the weight so close about there was no room for it without. And so, beneath the weight lay I, and suffered death, but could not die. Long had I lain thus, craving death, when quietly the earth beneath gave way, and inch by inch, so great at last had grown the crushing weight. Into the earth I sank, till I full 6 feet underground did lie, and sank no more. There is no weight can follow here, however great. From off my breast, I felt it roll, and as it went, my tortured soul burst forth and fled in such a gust that all about me swirled the dust. Deep in the earth I rested now. Cool is its hand upon the brow, and soft its breast beneath the head of one who is so gladly dead. And all at once, and over all, the pitying rain began to fall. I lay and heard each pattering hoof upon my lowly thatched roof, and seemed to love the sound far more than ever I had done before. For rain, it hath a friendly sound to one who's 6 feet underground, and scarce the friendly voice or face. A grave is such a quiet place. The rain, I said, is kind to come and speak to me in my new home. I would I were alive again, to kiss the fingers of the rain, to drink into my eyes the shine of every slanting silver line. To catch the freshened, fragrant breeze from drenched and dripping apple trees. For soon the shower will be done, and then the broad face of the sun will laugh above the rain-soaked earth, until the world in answering mirth shakes joyously, and each round drop rolls twinkling from its grass blade top. How can I bear it, buried here, while overhead the sky grows clear and blue again after the storm? Oh, multicolored, multiform, beloved beauty over me, that I shall never, never see again, spring silvered, autumn gold, that I shall never more behold, sleeping your myriad magics through, closed, sepulchered, away from you? Oh God, I cried, give me new birth, and put me back upon the earth. Upset each cloud's gigantic gourd, and let the heavy rain, down-poured in one big torrent, set me free, washing my grave away from me. I ceased, and through the breathless hush that answered me, the far-off rush of herald wings came whispering like music down the vibrant strings of my ascending prayer, and crash! Before the wild wind's whistling lash, the startled storm clouds reared on high and plunged in terror down the sky. And the big rain in one black wave fell from the sky and struck my grave. I know not how such things can be. I only know there came to me a fragrance such as never clings to aught save happy living things. A sound as of some joyous elf singing sweet songs to please himself, and through and over everything a sense of glad awakening. The grass a tiptoe at my ear, whispering to me. I could hear. I felt the rain's cool fingertips brush tenderly across my lips, laid gently on my sealed sight, and all at once the heavy night fell from my eyes, and I could see a drenched and dripping apple tree. A last long line of silver rain, the sky grown clear and blue again, and as I looked, a quickening gush of wind blew up and over me and thrust into my face a miracle of orchard breath. And with that smell, I know not how such things can be, I breathed my soul back into me. Up then from the ground sprang I, and hailed the earth with such a cry as is not heard, save from a man who has been dead and lives again. About the trees my arms I wound, like one gone mad I hugged the ground, and raised my quivering eyes on high. I laughed and laughed into the sky, till at my throat a strangling sob caught fiercely, and a great heart throb sent instant tears into my eyes. Oh God, I cried, no dark disguise can e'er hereafter hide from me thy radiant identity. Thou canst not move across the grass, but my quick eye will see thee pass, nor speak, however silently, but my hushed voice will answer thee. I know the path that tells thy way through the cool eve of every day. God, I can push the grass apart and lit my fingers on thy heart. The world stands out on either side, no wider than the heart is wide. Above the world is stretched the sky, no higher than the soul is high. The heart can push the sea and land farther away on either hand. The soul can split the sky in two and let the face of God shine through. But east and west will pinch the heart that cannot keep them pushed apart. And he whose soul is flat, the sky will cave in on him by and by.
That was Renaissance, poetry by Edna St. Vincent Millay, music by Jamie Shaak. And it was performed tonight by narrator Maria Lagios and pianist Jamie Shaak. You're listening to a program with Jamie Shaak and very talented musical friends, and there is much more to come. But right now we'll take a break. Thank you, Jan. And we are back in the studio, and we're about to hear from one of my favorite sopranos and people on the planet, Michelle Areyzaga.
Can you hear me blushing through the microphone?
I don't know if
Thank you, Carrie.
that happens on the radio. But
I'm so happy to be back with you, Carrie.
it's great to have you. And we're going to hear some music to begin by a favorite composer of mine who happens to live in the Chicago area, one Stacy Garrop.
And a favorite composer of mine as well. I was introduced to her music for the first time by Patrice Michaels in her show, The Notorious RBG in Song, and I sing that stunning song, to my dearest Ruth, which is really a heartbreaker. And fortunately, I'm so excited to tell you that we have recorded her massive epic piece, Terra Nostra.
Really?
Yes, on the CD label.
Oh, great.
And that's planned to be released on Earth Day 2024. So
Perfect.
Please look for that. Yes.
Some people may remember that we did a broadcast of that early on, just after the piece was written. I think it was close to the premiere of it. It wasn't...
Actually, hi, it's Stacy Garrop
Hi,
here.
surprise. Stacy's here.
Stacy.
The piece was written in 2014, 2015, but Stephen Altop became a champion of it pretty darn quick. And we had a series of performances around 2018, 2019, and right after the pandemic hit the globe, you performed one of the versions that Stephen had done at Northwestern on your program for Earth Day.
And it was wonderful. And I fell in love with it, and it's great to know that it'll have a commercial release.
Yes.
That is terrific. And we're going to hear music by Stacy now. The first song we're going to hear is actually a song, I think, which was commissioned in honor of Henry Fogel.
Yes, it was. So Henry Fogel has been a leader in many of the arts organizations in the Chicago area and beyond for a long time, and Sadie Records wanted to commission a piece on his behalf. We asked his wife, Fran, what should the topic of the piece be about? And she said, well, music, of course. So I searched for poems about music and found two lovely poems, both by Robert Herrick, who was an early English poet, and we're talking about 1600s here. And they were both called To Music, but they were located in different parts of whatever book I was looking at. And I thought they work really well together. So I strung them together, and that's how we got To Music.
Okay.
And they had their premiere somewhat recently. It had to be rescheduled a couple times.
But we premiered it at the Sadie Soiree a couple years ago now, and Michelle and Winston Choi performed it, and it was just magical.
This will be on the CD as well, right? Or not?
That is not on the. We don't know what project that might
what
be
a
on.
great
at some point.
idea for the future, Carrie.
Okay.
I'd like to read the text.
Please do.
It's a combination, as Stacy said, of two texts, two poems. Music, thou queen of heaven, care charming spell that strikest a stillness into hell. Thou that tamest tigers and fierce storms that rise with thy soul-melting lullabies, fall down, down, down from those thy chiming spheres to charm our souls as thou enchant'st our ears. Begin to charm, and as thou strokest mine ears with thine enchantment, melt me into tears. Then let thy active hand scud over thy lyre and make my spirits frantic with the fire. That done, sink down into a silvery strain and make me smooth as balm and oil again.
We'll hear that, but we'll also hear a second song by Stacy. It's called Dawn. Tell us about that.
So Dawn is a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was an early African-American poet, but the first that really came to national and international attention. He was born in 1872 in Ohio and only lived 33 years before he died of, I believe, tuberculosis. But in that short lifetime, he wrote, let me get this right, 12 books of poetry, 4 books of short stories, 5 novels, and a play.
Wow.
And this particular poem is called Dawn. I came across it in a book called, it was 1896 book called Lyrics of Lowly Life. And I originally set this poem along with 4 others, all from that same book, in a choral piece that I called Songs of Lowly Life. And then I realized this movement, Dawn, would be beautiful as a standalone vocal piece. So it's taken on different permutations. But the poem is, an angel robed in spotless white bent down and kissed the sleeping night. Night woke to blush, the sprite was gone. Men saw the blush and called it dawn.
All right, let us hear 2 songs by Stacy Garrett, To Music and Dawn, as performed by Soprano Michelle Areyzaga and pianist Jamie Shaak.
Thou Queen of Heaven, care charming spell that strikes the stars into hell, thou that tamest tigers and fierce storms that rise, with thy soul-melting lullabies, fall down, down, from those thy chiming spheres, to charm our souls as thou enchanced our begin to charm, begin to charm, begin to charm. And as thou strokest mine ears with thine enchantment, melt me into tears. Then let thy active hand scud over thy lyre, and make my spirits frantic with the fire that dawn, sing dawn, sing dawn,
We've just heard two songs by Stacy Garrop, To Music and Dawn, as sung by Michelle Areyzaga with pianist Jamie Shaak. And we turn next to two more songs, but a pair of songs now by Jake Heggie, the San Francisco-based composer of one of the most celebrated operas, as a matter of fact, of the 21st century, Dead Man Walking. He has also written more than 300 art songs, as well as orchestral works, concerti, chamber music, and choral works. The two songs we're going to hear are In the Beginning and 100,000 Stars. And I think the first thing we want to talk about with respect to Jake Heggie is his relationship with a very wonderful singer, no longer with us, alas, and a good friend of his, Bob Orth.
Yes, we wanted to sing some Jake Heggie in honor of Bob. The last time we were here live from WFMT was with Bob and Jane, and Jake composed a piece just for them called Grow Old With Me. And so we wanted to give this as a gift also to Jane, but Bob workshopped this opera that had the song 100,000 Stars. And I was living in Central City when I heard Michael Mays singing this song. He premiered this song. He was singing it also in honor of Bob Orth. And I happened to be walking down the street, and I heard this song in the courtyard at the Central City Opera. I wanted to say this is the first time that this song will be sung by a soprano, and Jake arranged this version for Michelle to sing tonight.
So we're going to hear two songs by Jake Heggie. The first, In the Beginning, from Of Gods and Cats, which is a setting of two poems by Gavin Jeffrey Dillard. The second song, 100,000 Stars, which Jamie just mentioned. And that comes from For a Look or a Touch, that text by Gene Shearer. And it was a one-act opera which was commissioned for Music of Remembrance in 2007. The text being based on a journal in the Holocaust Remembrance Museum in Washington, D.C. The journal was written by one Manfred Levin, a young gay man who died at Auschwitz in 1942. Here then, two songs by Jake Heggie, In the Beginning and 100,000 Stars, sung by Michelle Areyzaga with pianist Jamie Shaak.
In the beginning was the cat, and the cat was without The ether stirred, and there was milk, and the cat saw that it was good. It was good. La da 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 dee da 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 da. A hand stretched forth across the milk and scratched behind the cat's ears, and it felt good. Then the firmament shook, and there was produced a paper bag. And the cat went forth into the bag. beg and sing that it was good. She fell asleep. One by one, one by one by one, 100,000 stars, love, have fallen from the sky. 100,000 dreams gone, 100,000 sighs, 100,000 whispers, promises and lies. The constellations change, our stories rearranged, and darkness fills the sky. 100,000 stars, love, have vanished from the sky. 100,000 candle flames flicker out and die. Our laughter in the night, love, when you would hold me tight, love, like shadows on a wall nobody will recall. Who will remember how starlight filled the skies, as I will always remember the way it filled your eyes. Every star had a name, every one was a light. What is that I hear, love? A train is passing by. Another star has vanished, stolen from the sky. Hush, my love, hush, my love, hush, my love. My love. stars will be born to fill the sky again. You never are alone, love. I swear I'm by your side. There's very little light. Auf Wiedersehen, adieu, good night, my love. Good night. Good night.
Two songs by Jake Heggie. We heard first In the Beginning and then 100,000 Stars. Both performed for us this evening by Soprano Michelle Areyzaga and pianist Jamie Shaak. And we're going to go back now to music by Lee Hoiby and music from a song cycle called The Life of the Bee.
The Life of the Bee.
And I understand, Jamie, you've got some personal stories to share with us with respect to these three songs we'll hear from the cycle.
Yes, we're hearing 3 out of the 5, and I spoke with Mark Schulgasser, Lee Hoiby's life partner, and he was telling me that when Shauna was commissioned these pieces to be written from Jeffrey Beam's poetry, and she gave Lee Hoiby the whole set of Beam. I believe there were 18 poems. I think there were 18. And she had some in mind that she thought would be nice to be set to music, but she wanted him to choose. And it turns out, Mark said they both chose the same 5 that would be set for this cycle. So we're doing 3 of those.
And how did you choose the 3?
Well, I have been singing these songs for a little while, so I kind of spoke up with my favorites, I would suppose. And a shout out to Jeffrey Beam, who's listening from North Carolina.
Really? Great.
These are just 3 of my favorite ones. These poems characterize various activities and residents of a beehive. The first of the 3 is called Millennium Approaches, and this is actually the beginning of the cycle, and it's a brief elegy to the spent blossoms that the bees have used to keep themselves and their world going. And then my personal favorite, Ars Poetica, the Queen. And in this, we hear from the ancient queen herself, and she is surveying her kingdom. And it's such a wonderful text, and it's brief. I just want to share that one with you. In collaboration with my others, I build this hive. As I am goddess, this then is my cathedral, built of wax and lives, of light and honey. It grows, it grows, it grows around me. My first sensation was of yellow, a hum, forcing my skin to see. Since then, I have sung the praises of this operation and counted the mysteries, storing my drooly jewels. Isn't that great? Yeah. Then the final selection is called The Swarm. And here he evokes the exultant power of a bee swarm as it bursts out into the blossoms and then it passes us by.
And what I like particularly about this one is the way the cello gives us these wonderful tremolo passages, just suggesting all those bees swarming around.
100%.
Great stuff, great stuff. So let's hear these 3 selections from The Life of the Bee by Lee Hoiby. And by the way, cellist Gene Hatmaker will join us, join Michelle and Jamie in this set of 3 songs from the cycle The Life of the Bee.
that the world is painfully beautiful. Painfully sad. That spent blossoms recall the earth under which they once slept. Into which they now In collaboration with my others, I build this hive. As I am goddess, this then is my cathedral. Built of wax and lives of love. the miraculous droning, sibilant dances directing and thumping, buzzing in the foundation, snipping and cutting green air. A great muffled drum, the chorus tenses, its sibills pour out in a drunken jet to sing it. The bee flock, the thunder polliners, who tell extras in a roaring tissue, their matriarch with them throbbing, up to the pear tree, then from the mass, molten with magnetism and cracks, a yawn explodes. Up to the paling, and silence even now, scouts shuttle through the branches, making fiery mummery to the sun, inciting compass. This is a thing some will will not do.
We've just heard 3 songs from Lee Hoybe's song cycle, The Life of the Bee, texts by Jeffrey Beam. We heard A Millennium Approaches, The Queen and the Swarm. Our performers this evening were soprano Michelle Areyzaga, pianist Jamie Shaak, and cellist Gene Hatmaker. Much more to come on this concert with Jamie Shaak and friends in just a moment. But now a break and back to Jan. Thanks, Jan. And we're back in the studio and about to hear music by Reinhold Glier, the Russian composer of German and Polish descent who lived from 1875 to 1956, was a student of Sergei Taneyev, Mikhail Ippolitov-Ivanov, and Anton Arensky at the Moscow Conservatory, and was a recipient of the People's Artist Award, the highest award one could get in the Soviet Union at the time. The music we're going to hear was originally written as a duet for violin and cello, but we're going to hear an arrangement for bassoon, or rather, I'm sorry, oboe and piano. And Jamie, this is your arrangement, so tell us why you decided to do this.
Yes, I love the violin-cello duets that Glier wrote. I've written them for piano solo. And when I knew that Grace was going to be here for the Hoiby Lento Espressivo, I thought it'd be a wonderful chance to give a little more time for us to hear Grace play this beautiful piece that I don't think is heard enough in the world. So I wanted this one to last a little longer as well. So Grace agreed to play this duet with me.
Okay, and this is from a set of 8 pieces, Opus 39. It's the 4th in the set, written in 1909.
And it's called Canzonetta.
Canzonetta. Grace Hong on oboe and Jamie Shaak piano. Music by Reinhold Glier is arranged by Jamie Shaak for oboe and piano. The Canzonetta, performed by oboist Grace Hong and pianist Jamie Shaak. And we have next music for clarinet and strings by Miguel del Aguila. And this composer happens to be a good friend of the gentleman who will be playing the clarinet for us this evening.
Yes.
And Elizandro, why don't you tell us about your friendship with this wonderful gentleman and how you came to meet?
Sure. Miguel de Aguila is an Uruguayan-American composer, and I came across his work through Elvio Barilari.
Yes, we know him well.
Yes. We were researching on Latin American music, and he brought the name up, Miguel de Aguila. And I absolutely love his language. He's definitely in touch with his Latin American roots, and he writes very melodic lines and also very strong rhythms. He has influence from Brazilian music, samba, and also Argentinian, Uruguayan tango, and it's definitely evident in this next piece we're going to play.
It's a three-movement work, and he has actually a commentary with respect to this, which he has put forth, and it reads, "It is a romantic serenade meant to be performed at night under the stars. In general, the music is extremely quiet, delicate, sensuous, and sentimental. The sensuousness is created by the use of South American folklore idioms, especially the Brazilian choro, at times combined with blues melodies and jazz harmonies." Let's hear it now, as played by our clarinetist this evening, Elizandro Garcia Montoya, and he is heard with the members of the Kontras Quartet. Three movements marked con nostalgia, semplice, and recitando. That was music by Miguel de l'Aguila, his Pacific Serenade. The clarinetist we heard was Elizandro Garcia Montoya, and we heard the members of the Kontras Quartet, violinists Eleanor Barch and Francois Enkins, the oldest Ben Weber, and cellist Gene Hatmaker. We're going to talk a bit with Gene now before we hear the last work on our program this evening, which is a clarinet quintet by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. But Gene, let's get some plugs out of the way first. I understand you folks have a concert coming up that you'd like to talk about?
We do, actually. So not too long from now, 48 hours, we're going to be performing for the American Music Project. This is a great series that features music by American composers exclusively, and it's been our privilege to play on this series more than once and to discover some music we might not otherwise have come across. So we're going to play some music that it's Wednesday at 7.
Guns Hall, right?
Yes, in Gans Hall.
Okay.
And we're going to play music by a variety of people. We've got some Walter Piston on there. We've got some Harbison. We're playing some A.B. Beach. All sorts of lovely things. And if you want to know what else we're playing, you should just come.
Good idea.
It's going to be a great show.
And I understand you have an album coming out, or is out.
We have an album that is in the can, and we're in the editing phase. Which those of you in the know that can be quite a long process, but it should be well worth it in the end. It's an album that's going to be called Folklore, and it's something that's been sort of a calling card for us as late. We really do enjoy featuring music that demonstrates the inclusion of folk music and the folk influence on classical composers, and also folk composers writing in a classical idiom. And so we've got this great album. We loved being here for a residency where we sort of talked about that a lot a few years back.
I remember.
So this album is sort of a slow burn from that residency, culminating in this album that'll be coming out hopefully either later this year or early next year.
Great, great. Is there a website where people can check you out and find out about all that?
Absolutely. ContrasQuartet.com. Follow us on the socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. And we do have an e-blast, so if you happen to track us down sometime, we might be able to add people to that as well.
Great. Now let's talk about the final piece we're going to hear. And this is, well, not the entire piece, but a movement from Samuel Coleridge Taylor's clarinet quintet. And I remember some wag once said that if Dvorak had written a clarinet quintet, it would sound something like this.
Maybe Dvorak wishes. I mean, it's a pretty strong piece, and I understand that he wrote this in response to Brahms's clarinet quintet.
Right.
And I dare say that it does give it a run for its money. It's a really, really strong piece. It's very robust and charming at the same time. And it definitely does have some pretty significant Dvorak vibes, I would say. Not just in the melodic and harmonic content, but also in his sort of equal division of labor amongst the group. You know, everybody
Great.
gets something sort of interesting and juicy to play. And so it's been really great to get to know this piece. It's been great to perform this movement. It works very well on its own, but I do hope that sometime we can perform it in its entirety, and I expect it'll probably be very satisfying to listen to as well, especially those who've never heard it before.
Why don't you come back and do that?
I think we should. That sounds great. We'll take you up on that.
Okay. Here is the first movement of the clarinet quintet by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. It's marked Allegro Energico, and it's to be played for us by clarinetist Elizandro Garcia Montoya and the Kontras Quartet. Music by Samuel Coleridge Taylor. We heard the first movement, Allegro Energico, of his clarinet quintet. And with that, we've come to the end of this live concert, which featured soprano Michelle Areyzaga, pianist Jamie Shaak, and friends, namely clarinetist Elizandro Garcia Montoya, oboist Grace Hong, narrator Maria Lagios, and the Kontras Quartet. Its members are violinists Eleanor Barch and Francois Enkins, violist Ben Weber, and cellist Jean Hatmaker. And our thanks to all of these wonderful musicians for being with us tonight. Thanks also to my co-producer Louise Frank, to our music producer Max Lubian, and to our production assistants Ella Pinsloop and Adela Skoronsky. Video of tonight's concert, by the way, can be found at WFMT.com or WFMT's Facebook and YouTube channels. Next week, this program will welcome flutist Kim Flushaus and pianist Heidi Meyer to the Levin Performance Studio for a recital which will include music by Lily Boulanger and William Grant Still. I'm Kerry Fremkin, host and producer of these programs, hoping you'll be with us again next week for more music in performance live from WFMT.